Welcome back, everyone. So today you join me as I reduce down this boxwood. It's a big reduction. So I bought this from B&Q in the clearance section. And what happened was it basically fell out of the pot. The pot only had half the soil it should have had. And essentially from here on upwards, so this is only about, I'm going to say about 20-25 centimetres tall. And from that point upwards, it was a metre tall cone, a topiary cone. And the rest had died off anyway, so I'd basically cut back to places where there was new growth. And that's just an initial cut back just to get rid of all the dead. And this is where we're at today, so I'm going to spend some time digging around, finding the base, trying to see if I can see any roots, any topiary. Always start from the bottom up. And this video will be a bit jumpy, but without any edits or cuts, it was about 50 minutes long. That's how long this took me. So I didn't want to make you sit there for 50 minutes watching me just dig my fingers into a pot. Now this tree has some very big issues, but also some nice features as well, so it's like a 50-50. The trunk itself is quite nice. The bark obviously on the boxwood looks quite old. Some negatives I suppose, inverse taper, branches, branch placement. They're all kind of originating out of the same spot, which is one of the bigger issues that I fall into later. I'm not sure on the topiary. I couldn't really get quite down to exactly where they are, the roots, but this is where we got down to. So as you can see, it's got quite a bit of shape, quite a bit of character. And usually when you buy these topiary cones, they're multiple trees that are just put together and they're all pretty straight and pretty boring. The reason why I picked this one is because it was the only one out of the bunch and the only one I've actually seen. Because I usually do check, when I go to garden centres, I like to check the topiary cones or any kind of bushy looking subject to see what the base is actually like. Because, you know, a trunk to put on that much growth means it's usually quite a decent trunk. And as I say, most of them, the same with yews as well, like the yew bushes you can find. They're multiple trees kind of then just, you know, shape pruned to be a circle or a cone or a box or whatever they are. But as I say, this one, I struck a bit of gold and it was actually one trunk that caused all the growth. The only problem is obviously being B&Q, all the growers before them, they just kind of let all these multiple trunks, I suppose, grow out of one place. So there is actually a gaping hole in the middle of this tree. So I'll just start here by removing the bigger branches with my saw. Unfortunately, my new knob cutters didn't come at this point, they come the next day. So I didn't have them for this. I had my old branch cutters, which aren't great. But yeah, as you can see, that's the kind of thickness of branches we're talking on. I've just taken off there. And there are more issues than this. Now I marked a while ago the pot for what I thought was the front, and as I go through this tree I actually decided to change my mind, and it's kind of more to the other side, but you'll see that as we go on later. So I'm looking for branches that I can actually keep, both in size scale as well as position. There's one on the left here is actually quite good. It's not a bad size for the size of the trunk on that low down. However, the others, including the apex that I've got for the moment, are very thick and very boring. You know, this tree eventually won't be that much bigger than what it is here, in my mind. It's going to be more of like a sumo style, I suppose, sumo style kind of low but powerful kind of tree. That's what I'm going for. And as you can see, I'm already spinning it around, toying with the idea of different fronts and different angles that I could look at. At the end of the day, I'd say probably the base and the trunk looks best from this angle. But sometimes you have to compromise with the tree, because you don't always have things where you want them. And this is without seeing the bar as well, that could even change it even more. So when I come with the branch cutters, I'm just going to start cutting away some of these branches. As always, I try and come through the tree objectively and then back through subjectively. What I mean by that is I'm trying to cut out any kind of big issues or structural flaws, things that aren't going to be needed first, and I come back through for the styling part, and the styling is subjective. Now, a big problem with this branch is obviously it curls round, and it's quite a thick one as well, but that curls round the back of the other one, so I'm not sure, I wasn't sure at the time how I'd get into this, but I do eventually get it off, and you can see loads of little suckers and shoots popping out there of other cuts that I've made, and this tree is ridiculously healthy and back buds like crazy anyway, so these cuts don't really bother me. It's more the fact that it's going to take a good couple of years now to grow any branches with any significance. Boxwood, they can grow quick, but they can grow slow at the same time. What I mean by that is it can push out a load of shoots, but it takes a long time for that wood to then lignify and then become anything that looks old on the tree, basically. Again, if I had my new knob cutters, this would have been way easier. I should have left it for a couple of days to actually start work on this, but impatience is probably one of my downfalls when it comes to bonsai. When it comes to life in general, to be fair. And for some reason I couldn't really figure out what was going on with the branches in this section. There was some growth which looked quite good, and then you'll see in a minute that'll take off quite a big chunk there, and then another one back here. And that's just because obviously going forward, them pieces are either going to become problems or are problems now. Now there was times I was debating cutting all of these trunks off back to the actual main trunk and then waiting for back buds to come from there and literally growing out the whole thing from new. But I decided not to do that because I do actually want to keep this tree. It was cheap and but I doubt I'd find another subject like this in B&Q, let's put it that way. This is where I start to debate this side for a front. And that's just because the branch selection looks better from this side. Bearing in mind I do end up cutting away about 90% of what you see here, but it kind of hides a lot of flaws in this angle. I think it's quite naturalistic the way the base there is kind of like pushing out more to the left. It brings a bit of asymmetry rather than both sides being strong like this. Also means that thickest branch that was the apex can now be pushed towards the back and not be such an eyesore. It's actually quite a shame because there's a house that I go by whenever I walk to my local shop. My local shop's only about 3 minutes away. I say 3 minutes, about a 3 minute drive, so it's probably about a 10-15 minute walk. And on the way I pass a few houses. So where I live is quite an oldish area. I actually live in an old nurse's home, like nursing homes, kind of like in the terraced kind of houses for the hospital, which is right next door to me. And because of that, there are some really old bushes around and trees. And boxwood seems to be one of the things that I wanted to plant here, because I pass about 10 houses with boxwood bushes all out the front and like hedges, and there was one that had, every time I walked past it I used to look kind of over and down because of the base of the boxwoods, and there's some really old boxwoods, probably thicker than this one. But it seems like they struggled, not last year but the year before, when we had a day that was like 40 degrees, and the whole summer I think we had a drought for about, I want to say about 9 weeks of literally zero rainfall, which in the UK is, not really seen. I've mentioned this before about other trees, and there's some oaks in a local park, but anyway, yeah, so them boxwoods have all gone crispy, let's say, and they've got some new suckers, like they've survived, there's new suckers coming up from the base, but the old height of them is all dead and gone, which is a bit of a shame. So here I'm just using the bag trick, bag method of covering up branches just to see what it would look with or without them before I make these choices. Obviously some of these branches have probably been growing, I don't know, I'd say at least five years. And to cut off 5 years worth of growth not being sure, not always the best idea, so. You can now see the kind of shape I'm going for at the bottom of the tree, because these will be the first kind of branches that actually start on the trunk. I want to show that bit of trunk off. It's quite nice, muscly, and got some nice bark to it. So these will be the first kind of branches, and we're years away from this being anywhere near finished in quotation marks. But that will be essentially the shape of the base fit, and obviously I've got to build on this main leader that I have here. As you can see, it's quite a tough tree. Any kind of wood that's a couple of years old is just really tough to get through, especially with blunt branch cutters. So I did go back to the saw quite a lot, and then I found that the sap is quite gummy, so I kept on coming up the saw. I did eventually get through it. So I'm thinking about future branching, but the one issue that I'm still having here is that a lot of these are originating in the same place, and all that's going to do is thicken up this part of the trunk even more. Yeah, I wouldn't exactly call these bar branches, but they are originating from about the same point. I usually like to give like a centimetre or two-ish between branches on the left and right, or front and back of the tree. Anything that's within that becomes a bit too close, and it's essentially the same place it's coming from. So I'm just going to start cleaning up some of these older cuts here as well, and there's a lot of cuts on this side of the tree. And boxwood don't exactly heal well or quickly at all. So, you know, if you're going to take off a big branch, you best be sure about it and try and hide it, really. And I think that's why I've picked that as a new front as well, because of this big old cut that I've got on the back here. It will hide that from this angle. Now this part is actually where a branch was stacked on top of another branch that I've cut off, so I'm trying to cut into it enough to get the old branch off, but not damage the new one that's underneath it. There we go, finally got to it. This is sometimes the issue with nursery stock. They're not trained to be bonsai, they're trained to be either topiary, or they're just left to grow randomly. And you have to correct a lot of issues that have occurred over the years. So quite a funny part of this video is whenever I'm using the saw, because of the way my light set up at the time, I've now got a new light as well. But I essentially had a ring light, and behind the tower is actually my TV, so I had a ring light on top of my TV. But with the amount of shaking the table was doing, the light kept on falling down as I was using the saw. And then I remembered I have my secateurs, which I haven't actually used in probably about 2 years now. I try not to use them too much. I mean, they're good for cutting really strong bits of growth, but you'll find that knob cutters, branch cutters just get into it a bit better. Leave a better cut. Not these ones though, because they're blunt. Now the main part I'm really looking forward to on this tree is obviously getting into bonsai pots and bonsai soil, and then looking at leaf reduction, because obviously boxwoods have quite small leaves anyway. I would imagine when you start reducing the leaf size on these, it must look pretty amazing. Just to skip ahead here, because there's a bit more cutting that went on. But you can see what I'm kind of left with structural wise, and it's a little bit pom-pomish for the minute. I might have to look at changing angles and changing the front slightly. Obviously I've cut a big divot in the pot there to show you what the new front is. I didn't want to take off too much in one go either, so I'm just covering up some of these old cuts here. I did go back with a Stanley blade and just kind of smoothing some of these edges off a little bit, but I just wanted to see how it reacted. And you know, I wouldn't mind some deadwood on this trunk, or creating hollows eventually. Wouldn't mind that at all. Shows a bit more age, if anything. And that is where we're at the moment. Looks a bit rudimentary, but we'll see how we go in the next couple of years, I suppose. Just rubbing off some buds I don't want. So then the final 360 of the tree, as it stands now. Got rid of a lot of issues, and I'm still left with a lot of issues, so always things to work on and improve. And the damage cam. Now all of these are going to be made into cuttings, and we'll see how they go. If you enjoyed today's video, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell notification for future videos.